How are you?
Hi, how are you, Vanna?
I'm good, ma'am. So, ma'am, we are on time exactly. So, without much ado, I'll just start with a little bit of introduction for our viewers. So, good afternoon, everyone. We are absolutely honored to welcome a true pioneer and a trailblazer with us. Ma'am, no words for you. Miss Shabdi Basu, India's first professional mixologist, and who defined the beverage industry at a time when very few people even knew what mixology meant. Actually, choosing such an unconventional career path, ma'am, back then required immense courage, passion, and vision. From breaking stereotypes to building a powerful personal brand, she has inspired countless professionals, especially women, to pursue career beyond traditional boundaries. Today, we are excited to dive into her journey and understand the challenges she overcomes and learn from her incredible experience. Welcome to the session, ma'am. It's a privilege to have you here.
Thank you, Vanna. I'm so excited to be here with you and everyone on the Women's Tribes. Really very happy to share my journey and experiences and whatever questions you throw at me, I'm very happy to answer.
Okay, ma'am. So, first of all, just tell about your journey. It's truly pioneering and very inspiring. How did you first step into mixology at a time when I think barely anybody knows this profession in India? What inspired you to choose this path?
So honestly, I didn't choose it at all. I actually wanted to be a chef, but instead of that, I after trying for 1 year almost in the kitchen, I realized that where I wanted to go and where they wanted to put me were two different paths. So I quit thinking I will leave a hotel which has too much red tape and too many layers of hierarchy. I thought I'd go to a standalone restaurant where there'll be less red tape. And I joined a standalone restaurant where again I didn't find a scope in the kitchen. They wouldn't want me there, but they offered me a job in the restaurant. And I thought that at least I'm working with the cuisine that I like, and maybe sometime later the chef might change his mind. And so I started working on the floor of the house in the restaurant. But over a period of time, the manager decided that I was in charge of the bar as well. So one day he just came and announced to me that you're in charge of the bar. And I said, oh, but we don't really have a bar here. I mean, we just have a small little place. And he said, yes, I know, but we still have cocktails on our menu. And you're in charge of making the cocktails. And I was like really a little taken aback because I had no experience of mixing drinks. I knew what they were because I had studied them in college. However, I had no experience or technique of mixing drinks because I had never really looked at it. My entire focus had been the kitchen. So I thought to myself, oh God, I better start opening books again because I really need to know this. And that's what I did. I started reading and but before I had a chance to really study it properly and read, I was already taking orders for drinks as well. And more than that, whoever was taking orders for drinks, if there was a cocktail order, it got passed on to me.
Okay.
And when I had to make my first cocktail, I was so not prepared for it. I went there, I asked all the right questions because theoretically I knew it all. Practically, I knew nothing. And I thought, how difficult can it be? Let me at least, I mean, if I say no, I don't know how to make this, then it'll look really bad. Because he might ask me, so which of these cocktails do you know? And I might not know any of them. So I thought, okay, this is not a very difficult cocktail. It was the martini. And I said, it's a two-ingredient cocktail. How wrong can it get? So I went there, I spoke to him, I asked all the right questions. I went to the bar and I started looking for the ingredients. Now it really had only two ingredients. He asked for an extra dry martini, which means I needed a bottle of gin and I needed a bottle of dry vermouth, these two. So I went, I found the bottle of gin because it was in the display right up. I couldn't find the bottle of vermouth and I thought, oh my God, there's no vermouth here. So I asked the manager and I said, listen, I have an order for a martini, but there's no vermouth in the bar. So he just looked at my face and said, figure it out. I was like, figure it out? What do you mean, figure it out? How do you have a menu which has a drink and you don't have the ingredients? If you don't have the ingredients, you should not have it on your menu.
Right.
Then I thought to myself and I said, what is dry vermouth? And thank goodness I was paying attention when I was in class at least. And I could recall what was the lecture in class about vermouth, where it said that it was based on dry white wine, and it was then infused with aromatics, and it had an extra dose of alcohol to keep it stable. So I said to myself, okay, I'm breaking this down. I know we have white wine somewhere. So I'll get the white wine. I will add extra alcohol. So I'll up my gin content to balance the alcohol in the wine because wine is low, but vermouth is higher. So I will balance it with a little extra alcohol in the cocktail. And then for aromatics, I looked around and I found there was a bottle of something called Cinzano Aperitivo. That was a little bit like Campari. So I thought, okay, that is highly aromatic. If I dip my stirrer in this and if I stir my drink with it, I will get the aromatics, but I won't get the color because that is red and the martini needs to be clear. So I said, I'll try it like that. And so I did it. I put in the shaker, I put the ice, I put the gin, I put a little bit of white wine, dipped my stirrer in the aperitivo and shook off the extra stuff. I stirred it up. I put it into a cold glass. Luckily, they had olives. So I put in the olives and I told the waiter, I said, take it to the table. And I stood in the corner waiting to see the guy's reaction on his face. And he had a sip and I could see on his face that he was good with it. And then he drank the whole drink and asked for a second one. And I thought, wow, I got it right the first time. That's brilliant.
Ma'am,
But
sorry to interrupt you, but here,
Yeah.
but without any professional training.
well, I had some training in college, right? 3 years of hotel management prepares you for a little bit because it gives you your background. It gives you the background stories. It tells you about spirits and it tells you about cocktails. It doesn't do it in detail. It doesn't allow you to practice cocktails, but it gives you the basics of the classic cocktails and it gives you the basic of wines and spirits. So you have that. And if you've paid attention, and you had the interest while you were in college, it kind of sticks because you make notes on everything, right?
Yeah.
So thank goodness that it was interesting in college, and therefore it stuck in my brain, and I was able to pull it back. And luckily, it was just say barely 1.5 year out of college. So it was in 81. I passed out of college in 80. So it was just a year and a half out of college.
Yeah.
So it was still reasonably fresh in the mind.
But still, ma'am, it's a struggle that if you are into the food and then to the mixology, it's like a great jump start.
Of course it is. It was a definite jump start. But because it was a jump start and because I saw the look on the person's face when he had the drink, it got me so excited that I thought, wow, this is really good because I can actually see the expression on people's faces when I make my drink. And if it's wrong, I can also see that, which means I have the chance of correcting it.
Right.
And that got me really excited. And then I studied really hard. I had a book on mixology, which I had never opened. When I was in final year of college, surprisingly, it was my mom and my aunt who had given me that book. My mom had gone to England to see her sisters. And while she was there, my uncle used to work in a nightclub. He was a nightclub manager in London.
Okay.
And he gave this book and said that you should buy this book for her. If she's studying hotel management, this is a really good book to have. So I took out that book and I started reading it. And honestly, I read it page to page. And going through that book, I realized how exciting this whole world of spirits and mixology was.
Exactly.
And I thought, this is it. I don't want to go into a kitchen where they don't even want me. I mean, I might as well stay in an area where nobody except me is there.
What you said, ma'am, this is
Yeah.
next question that many industry, including chef and mixology, have historically male dominated. When women step into these spaces, especially as entrepreneurs, what initial action help them build credibility? Because they don't want to take orders from a woman. I must say, because I have seen that in the early days of mine. What are the key struggles they encounter while working with the male teams? And how can they navigate bias and earn respect and create their own path to success?
Well, I think the only thing you can do is be really good at your job. Be extremely knowledgeable. So study as hard as you can to be the best that you can be. Garner every tool that you need to become really good at what you do, because then you can lead by example. And I think that is the best way to change everything. When you lead by example, when you show them that you actually know what you're doing, and that you're not looking for excuses, you're not looking for help from them, you're not looking to take the easy way out,
Exactly.
you're willing to do all the hard work. For me, it was doing everything. Even if I had to lift a box of beer or a box of spirits to bring into the bar, I was perfectly happy doing it. I didn't ever look at the boys and say, hey, you guys do the heavy lifting, I'll just come and do everything else. I used to do everything. I cleaned the bar, I set up the bar. Later on, when I was working in a proper bar, in that restaurant, they didn't even have a proper bar. So I didn't have to really do any cleaning. I could go and give everything in the kitchen and they would wash up and give it back to me. But once I stepped into an actual bar,
Mhm.
I would do my own washing. I never expected others to do it for me. I would make sure that my section was kept clean. The bar counter was cleaned all the time. If I had to clean ashtrays, they were done. If I had to wash up after I finished mixing, I would do it on my own. I would wipe the glasses. At the end of the shift, I would make sure that the bar was sparkling clean. I would go to the stores for pickup if I had to. There was no problem. So when you show them by example, when you lead by example, and you show them how good you are at your job and that you're not asking for excuses, you're not asking for assistance all the time, saying, do the heavy work for me. I think that is what gives respect. They can see that you are able to communicate well, that you're doing all the jobs, and once you can show them that you are good at what you do, you are faster than them sometimes. Then it comes into play, and then I think they are happy to have you on the team, because you also are there as part of a team. Okay, so you're not saying that I will do my stuff and you do yours. You also are part of a team, therefore you are doing teamwork as well.
Mhm.
You are giving them what they need as well, which means that if someone, and this was very helpful to me, because boys like to take smoke breaks often.
Yeah.
And the other boys are not that helpful when it comes to taking smoke breaks. They crib at them. Me, on the other hand, I'd say, yeah, cool. I'll handle your section while you're gone. No problem. And that helped.
Yeah.
That really helped.
Very
So I
good.
think, I kind of realized that you have to work with them and give them what they want.
Yeah.
So if you can understand what they need and give them what they want, it works well. And therefore they learned after a while that she's good. We don't need to either fear her, nor do we need to have any issues with her, because she has no issues with anybody else, and she doesn't create issues in the bar. She actually then solves the issues. And I think that's what was in my favor. Right from the first one, where I used to sit with my wait staff and the floor staff on the team, and I would then pass my knowledge to them. I would train them. I would sit with them in the afternoon, and I had a group of three very young kids who had joined with me. Honestly, they were probably just 2, 3 years younger than me.
Okay.
But because I was senior, they felt that I was the senior person. And because they were brand new,
I think I can't hear you. It has been stuck.
sorry about that.
No problem.
That was one silly phone call coming through. Maybe I should put my phone on airplane mode, no? I
Yeah.
forgot about that.
I've done the same thing.
Give me 1 second. I'll do it. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, yeah.
If it goes off, I'll come back, okay?
So she's still here with us, guys.
I'm back. I'm back. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I completely forgot. I should put it on airplane mode before I started. So yeah, so I think that's the whole thing. That if you lead by example, if you don't make excuses, if you also put in all the hard work, and then demonstrate how good you are at what you do, and that you're willing to share your skills and your experiences with others, I think for most part it falls into place.
Yeah. So, ma'am, you've started from kitchen to the bar counter, right? What both those self doubt and hesitation initially you faced in your early days, and how you just overcome with them?
So the self-doubt was only lack of knowledge and lack of tools. So in the early days, we didn't really have great tools in the bar. We didn't have great glassware. We didn't have great tools, and we have very limited selection of spirits to work with. So we didn't have very many liqueurs. Mummy, hardly any. So we had to get really creative with our cocktails. We had to adapt a lot of the classic cocktails based on what was available with us. So it was all a lot of adaptation, a lot of learning, a lot of challenges when it comes to getting more knowledge, because the only thing we had at hand was books. There was nothing else but books. So it was an endless search for good books. Obviously, we were still freshers, so we didn't really have a lot of money. Therefore, going to an actual store to buy books was very difficult because they were expensive. So, lucky for us in Bombay, we used to have um, books on the footpaths in the city around the fountain and fort.
At which year?
Sorry,
You're talking about which year?
I'm talking about 81, 82.
Okay.
We used to have, for the longest time, we had books that used to be sold on the streets around Fountain and Fort area. Okay, guys used to, booksellers used to actually be sitting on the pavement with secondhand books. And for me, it was great because there were not too many people looking for books on spirits. So whenever we found them, they were the cheapest. Storybooks and novels were the most expensive. Encyclopedias were expensive, but books on wines and spirits were not very expensive. So we used to keep searching, searching, searching. कहीं ना कहीं मिल ही जाता था.
Okay.
And I used to save money so that once in a month I could go there and buy some books.
Oh.
And those were the books that actually got me through everything, because they were the ones from which I could learn more about spirits, more about wines, more about liqueurs, more about mixology. And that helped. Because once you understand what is technique and what is flavor, then you can look around you to see what is available to you. And lucky for us in India, fresh fruits were always available.
Yeah.
Unlike the West, where they did not really have great fruits to begin with, surprisingly, and they used a lot of frozen and canned stuff.
Yes.
We, on the other hand, had no canned and frozen stuff. We only had fresh. So our whole journey began with fresh. So we would look at cocktails that were in the books and then learn how to adapt them using flavors that we knew. The rest of it we used to create. For example, we didn't have any coffee liqueur. And I thought to myself, ab kare kya? Coffee liqueur banaye kaise? And so then I said, okay, we had instant coffee. And we knew that instant coffee, when mixed, can become thick with water because it absorbs a lot of water. So I thought, okay, let's take instant coffee and mix it into a spirit. So I started with rum because that was the cheapest spirit. I tried it with vodka and I found the rum one was better than the vodka one. So I mixed sugar and I mixed coffee powder and allowed the sugar to melt and the whole liquid to become slightly sticky and thick. And I said, okay, this looks like a liqueur. Then I, of course, tested it around with everybody to say, hey, taste and tell me if this is good. And they said, yeah, it's great. So that's how we created a home coffee liqueur to see that. Same way, I experimented with all other flavors as well. All the flavors that we needed in that. Dried aloo bukhara and dried jardalu. Put that into brandy or put that into vodka, allowed it to soak. And because it has natural sugars, it actually gave the flavor to the spirit and became sticky like a liqueur. And we could use that in our cocktails. So it just by sheer using common sense with what is available to us, we adapted drinks to make those kind of flavors. We also used to have essences. So when it got really bad, the essences we used to use to make cake, we used those essences in our drinks in smaller quantities to get the flavors that we wanted. So it was really all trial and error, and a lot of it worked, some of it did not work. So of course we adapted all over again. So I think it was a great game changer for me. um, I got to work in air conditioned atmosphere. If I was in the kitchen, it would have been really hot and horrible. I had music in the background, which is great. I had a great team of people who liked working with me because I always shared what I knew. And we had a great consumer profile who came to our restaurants, and I could go there, talk with them, gain experience of communication skills, understand their palate, understand what they wanted, because that was the best part, right? That I could go to them, understand what they wanted, then go back, mix the drink according to their flavor profile, um, and then see that whether they liked it or not. So I think that for me, that was a big game changer. And I think that was when I decided that this is it for me. I don't think I want to work in the kitchen anymore. I'm really happy working in the bar. All I have to do is get better at it and keep studying so that I could become really good one day. And honestly, that's all I did. Nothing else. I got rid of I was a little thick skinned. So if there were biases, I didn't really react too much to them.
Yeah.
And there were very few. In a restaurant where the customers know you already because you're already talking to them, and we had a lot of regulars who would, and I would talk to them about the food because I was really good with my knowledge of food. And then it was the same person who then started talking to them about the new drinks that we were doing. And so for them, that was really great because it's the same person who's giving them information on both. And then when they saw that I was making it myself and bringing it to them, uh, they loved it. And the women especially loved it even more because they could then have a talk with me, because otherwise they used to find it very difficult to talk to men
Nice.
or to the guys. And I think the fact that women found it easier to come and talk to me all through made it even better.
Okay.
So that really made it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say. It was fab.
Yeah.
And I think slowly and steadily people started looking at me as simply someone with a great deal of knowledge in the bar who you could talk to, and not some like, why is there a girl in the middle of all the boys?
Yeah. So, ma'am, the next question is on that note only, that building a personal brand requires clarity and courage. Courage is the key. What was the core idea behind your brand, and how did you just shape it into identity over the years? Then you started setting up the bars for the restaurants. Then you're just making the whole menu. How does it came to the picture then?
I didn't think of it like that at all. Honestly, it's only today that people think about the brand. So I had no idea what I was doing. I was not going there looking to make a brand for myself at all. I was just doing my thing and enjoying it. Okay. I was not there to break any glass ceilings because I didn't even know that I was breaking any. I was simply doing a job that I was trained to do. I thought I'm part of F&B, and F&B includes B, not just the app.
Yeah.
So I was just doing what I was doing. At no point in time did I ever thought that I was doing anything different or spectacular. I just thought that I was doing something really good that I enjoyed a lot, and that I was building my skills along the way. It's only when people started asking me questions, that is when I started thinking, and all that, really, is there nobody else doing it?
Yeah.
And there were very few people doing it. And I started. There were only about 3, 4, or 5 people, guys in the country who were doing it, who were working behind the bar. Also, uh, towards maybe the first 10 years, there was one girl who started working in the bar as well in Bombay.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad she didn't continue for too long. She did for a while, and that was really great. But then she stopped. But for me, it was something that it was not just about me. it was about then sharing it with other people and helping other people to shape their careers as well. So all of these things kind of just fell into place over a period of time. The first change that happened with me was that I learned how to write about what I had learned by experience. So when I took a break, so I took two breaks, one small break and one long break. In 88, I took a 6 month break to study. So I had a lot of friends who were studying for their MBA.
Okay.
And they used to talk to me all the time. And I thought, maybe I should also do this. Maybe it'll help me. Because I was never any good with numbers. And I thought if I do my MBA, my skills of managing might get better. So I said, one day I'll also appear for the entrance exam. So I studied a little bit for the entrance exam and I said, okay, let's go. I realized my mathematical skills were really poor. So I knew I would really do badly in that section. And I went to give the entrance exam. But when I went to give the entrance exam, I realized that all the management courses were post graduation. And that's when I got a bit of a start that my 3 year hotel management course was not did not make me a graduate. It was only a diploma, even though it was 3 years. It at that time. Today it's a graduate course. Yeah, but in my time it was only a diploma, and they were supposed to give it an equivalent status, but they did not. And I said, my God, that was like a big blow to my
Yes, of course.
to me. My ego as well got bruised a little because I said, oh shucks, people are going to turn around one day. Somebody might say, oh, you're not a graduate.
Yeah.
I thought that would be like, oh my God, what a big thing. So I took a break for 6 months and I said, how do I do this? I know that while working, there's no way I can go back to college. By that time, I had already got married and I was living on my own. So there was no question that I could stop working for 3 years and go back to college. I could not afford that. So I found that there was an online thing where you could do online study and you could give your exam. So I said, okay, I went, I found out all the details, I got my course materials, applied for it. And it gave me an option of doing it in 2 parts or doing it all together, BA part 1, BA part 2. I thought, no, I can't do it in 2 parts because I won't be able to take leave again. If I've taken a break for 6 months, let me just do both together. So I literally studied for like 14 hours a day because some of the subjects were new to me. I came from a science background. So I did not have the background of arts subjects. Except for economics, which I studied while I was studying hotel management, we also had economics as a subject. So I went to my college, spoke to my economics professor, and told him, please help me, give me some books to study. So he gave me books to study. A friend of mine who was doing his MBA said, I'll teach you whatever you can't understand, Mark. When I come to Bombay, I will help you understand it. So that happened. And then I went, it was linked to Osmania University in Hyderabad, which means that after whatever I did, to give the exam, I had to go and stay in Hyderabad. So I actually went there, stayed there for a month almost, and gave my BA part 1 and part 2 and got my graduation.
So complete break from the
Yeah. Complete break from work because I knew that to study and to see at every point in my life when I was studying, I was a very laid back person. I was a terrible student. Okay. I was always lazy. I had it. I could do it if I wanted to. I was just too lazy. I didn't want to. I'd rather have fun and play rather than study. So my family, my parents had quite given up on me. They said, chalo, as long as she gets through reasonably, we are good. But you know how you have an older brother and older sister who are good at studies. It bruises your ego a little bit. So my ego said to me that you cannot you have to at least go above 60%.
Mm.
Thank God I was the first batch of 10 plus 2. If I had been later, I would have been in trouble. Because at that time, getting above 60% was still good. Not like today, that even if you get 90%, you're no good. So I was saved.
Mm.
So I managed to actually go above 60. And my parents were like, oh my God, she got a first class. We were expecting कि at least 50% में pass भी हो जाए, so we are good with her, knowing how she is. But when I actually got a first class, they were like so pleased with me. Same thing I did in my 12th. I knew I needed to get that because otherwise I would not get. Oh, so my earlier aim was to be a vet.
Ma'am, you're always a very positive person with a positive mindset and a very strong-headed woman, as far as I know you. So, how have you been raised? In which kind of atmosphere that gives you all that boost? That from chef you've been to mixology thing. That then there is a break in the work and you have joined your studies. Because most of the women is not capable doing the major changes in their life. You know.
I think my parents always told me that I could do anything I wanted. Um, my father thought that I could do whatever I wanted. He wanted me to be a doctor. I told him I don't want to be a doctor. I'm not interested. I actually wanted to be a doctor, but I wanted to be a doctor for animals. So that was my first vision. I studied science only because I needed to get into veterinary college. Without science, I couldn't be a doctor. So I studied science so that I could get admission in vet college. By the way, I actually got admission in vet college as well.
Okay.
That was then canned by my family doctor because I had so many allergies. They said if you send her to vet college, she'll be in hospital more than the animals will be. So suddenly I was sent to go look at catering college. Why? Because I was the only one in the family who actually went into the kitchen.
Oh.
So that's my first switch.
Okay.
So I think my father said to me that you know that you have the capacity to do more. You know that if you want to crack anything, you can. You just don't want to because you're just too lazy and too laid back. And I said, yeah, I mean, you have these two who are studying so hard. Why do you want me also to study so much? Let me be, no? I just like to chill a little bit. But later on, that same thing. So there was no bias in the house. The house was that all girls are the same as guys, that they can do everything. And just because you're a girl doesn't mean you can't do this, that, and the other. You can do whatever you want. So that already had prepared me. Um, the little bit of bruising of my ego, which I had got while I was in school and college, also helped. Because then I realized when I was old enough not to make excuses for myself, I realized that seriously, if I put my mind to something, I know I can do it. And that's how every time there was something where I wanted to make a change, I knew that I had the capacity to do whatever I wanted. I just needed to put my mind to it, and I just needed to want it badly enough. And this is what I keep telling people, that if you want something badly enough, nobody can stop you.
Of course.
All of us have been given the same brain.
Yes.
Most of us don't use it to capacity. We just don't use it. It's like any electronic gadget. The more you use it, the better it works for you. If you take an electronic gadget and put it away for 3 years and then expect after 3 years that it will work, it's not going to work. It will have rusted inside. And our brains also rust in the same way. But if you use them, they start working for you even more. And our brains have unlimited capacity to expand. So, unlike computers where you have to keep adding RAM to make it work and you have to keep adding memory, we have both RAM and memory that are unlimited. So, if you use them, you can be fantastic at anything you choose to. And it's true. And I have tried it out and I know for sure. I know for sure because I've done random things, Vandana, random, which has got nothing to do with what I'm doing, nothing to do with my career. I just put my mind to it and I've been able to do it without any problem. So I think all of us have that capacity. We just don't realize it. We are not capable of only one thing. We are capable of doing multiple things. And you, Vandana, should know more than anyone else You have no, it's true. Come on, I've known you for so many years. I've seen you shape your whole life. I've seen how you have changed from where you were when I first met you to where you are today. I've seen how you've changed. No, I've seen how you've changed your life entirely, and I've seen how you have step by step with absolute conviction that you can do it. So I think it's that simple belief in yourself. If you believe in yourself, and that is the key to everything, please, please, please learn to believe in yourself. Have absolute implicit and innate belief in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you can achieve anything you want to. Have the vision to see where you want to be, then work like crazy towards it, and nobody can stop you. Nobody can stop you.
That's absolutely right, ma'am. You're absolutely
So I think not just me, you are an example yourself that no one can stop you once you decide you want to do something.
right.
So yeah.
Ma'am, the next thing which I would like to ask you, that back then there was no social media, there was no marketing gimmicks and all. So how did you put your foot forward to market yourself? You know that mostly people should know in this industry, so you get more work, more progress towards your journey. So how does is this era of social media helping you now, and back then without the social media?
So back then, you're right, there was no social media, there was nothing, but there was print. And what happened is when I took my second break, when I had my baby, I thought to myself, कि अब क्या करूं मैं? I needed to be there for my kid full time. Um, and that's when I started after the first year, when I kind of adjusted to the whole routine of kids. I started to write. I learned how to write. I initially started simply by writing down only my experiences on paper. I started writing out all my recipes in a diary. I did all that. And then I started one day, I saw something in a newspaper and I thought, wow, people are writing on wine and really they're being so horrible about it. I can do better than this. And I actually just sent off a fax to the editor of Midday asking them whether they would be interested in articles on wines and spirits and cocktails. And they said, well, send us some examples. So I sat down and I wrote a few and I sent it to them saying this. And they called me to the office and said, we like what you've written and we like your style. Can you start writing for us? Once in 15 days, Sunday midday, we'll give you a full double spread and you can write and we'll send our photographer to do the photography. I said, yeah. And so I started writing. Post that, I started writing for the trade magazines as well,
Okay.
which were for hospitality. So that's how people started to get to know me within the trade as well as in the mainstream, because everybody read Midday. And so my articles every 15 days, twice a month in the Sunday Midday, people used to read them and the feedback was fabulous. That people actually loved it. They loved reading about it because I write like I speak. So it's very casual and it's very connecting.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I was connecting with the people. I was giving them information in the way they wanted it. I was not being technical and grand to show how much I knew. Rather, I was giving it to them in a format that they would understand. And I used to also give them cocktail recipes, which were very simple and easy to make. So people were actually using those recipes and they were making cocktails at home and they could see that they were actually successful. So I think in those days, between writing for the trade, and there was one time where I started even editing the spirits pages of one of the trade journals. And so people in the hospitality industry also started to know me from my writing in the trade journals.
okay.
And consumers started to get to know me from my writings in Sunday Midday. And then later on, I wrote for other papers as well. I've written for Telegraph as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'd written for other newspapers and magazines in Bombay as well. So I think that's how it all happened. And then when I came back after the break, that's when I decided that I really need to do something different with my life. I need to turn it around. I had the idea that I wanted to start a school. So I tested it out. I thought I should run a national bartending competition because I realized that in our country, there has never been a bartending competition. And that was really sad. And so in 97, I did that. I went to the Taj. I met with the then manager there, general manager, and I spoke to her and I explained what I was doing to her, and she was really nice to me. Shirin Batliwala, her name is, and she was really, really supportive of me. And she said, "Sure, I'll give you the space to do it at the Taj Bombay." And so we actually ran the competition there. A lot of the general managers who I met to come to speak at the conference and to become judges were also very, very supportive. Um, Everyone had told me it's going to be very difficult and people will not support it. They don't understand this. But on the contrary, I found people were very, very supportive. And so we did our first competition in 97, followed by second one in 98, third one in 2000, and then we launched the school and I started teaching. And at the same time, I also started looking at bars and saying that realized that the bars today were still being made like the old school bars. They used to have just a tiled countertop and they had fridges at the back and the ice was still in those tote boxes and thermocol boxes and people would put it into little ice buckets and they would work. And I had seen bars internationally only on paper because I used to subscribe to some of the magazines. While I was writing, I'd come across them. And I thought, what is this? Why should we not do this as well? So I had the opportunity in 98 at a bar in town where they were redoing their entire bar. So because they knew I was writing, they called me and asked me if I would do their cocktail menu. And I said, can I also redo your entire bar if you haven't done it? And they said, yes, you can. So I learned how to draw. A friend of mine was a chef there. I told him, please help me because my mathematics is not great, but I can tell you what I want and I will draw it out. And with him and the fabricator who was doing the steel fabrication of the kitchen together, I drew out the entire bar. And that was the first time that I designed a modular bar for a hotel. It had never been done in India by anybody.
So the change makers, you were a change.
Even the fabricator had never made a bar like this ever in his life. And even for him also, it was big learning. But we did it and it worked really well. While working on that bar, I learned from the mistakes that we had made. And the second bar that I made in year 2000 was even better. And by that time, I had understood that international bars work differently from us. So we have to design it for us. So my second bar was even better in year 2000. I made a really, really good bar. And that was super, super efficient and really good. So that whole time that I took off gave me the time to think a little more about how to work, how we work behind the bar, and to make changes in the bar so that future generations of bartenders would really do well. So
Sometimes this need to take a break.
honestly, that's how the whole transformation happened. And that's when you realize that if you have knowledge of one thing, but you look at it from different angles, you can do different things as well. So you can write about it, you can design things, you can talk about it, you can do master classes. All of that just falls into place. That's how the changes happened.
So mixologist is now, ma'am, gaining a lot of popularity. Everybody knows, and I think I'm personally a fan of it and really wanted to do a course on it. But what do you think that more youth should consider it as a profession, and what kind of opportunities it does offer today?
It has great opportunities. Today, the opportunities are more and more. It's become wider as well. You can learn from it. You You know how many bars are opening up every day?
Yeah.
Everywhere in our country, bars are opening up all the time. So there's always going to be an opportunity. Also, the shipping industry, the cruise industry, that offers also huge opportunity. Once they have learned their job, once they have some experience in the on the ground here, they can actually join cruise ships and do really well at the international level. It also offers job opportunities to go work outside the country. If you're really good at your job, you get opportunities to work outside the country as well. You've seen that. I've seen that. Our kids who have trained with us have gone all over the world and are doing extremely well, not just on the cruise ships, but they're doing well outside the country as well, everywhere in the world. Every corner of the world they have gone to, they've done really, really well. So I think when you see that, you know that this is the kind of opportunity offers. Of course, then there are people like me who, after working for so many years, are working for themselves now. And that's another opportunity. Also, the entertainment business in India has also just expanded. Event business has expanded.
Yes.
So you have opportunities to put up bars everywhere. So bars are never going to go away. Whether it's a proper bar, whether it's at an event, whether it's at a wedding, or whether it's at a corporate function, there's always an opportunity. And therefore, if you do a really good job, if you work really hard, I think the opportunity is always going to be there for you to do well.
So, ma'am, do we need more women in this industry? What do you have to say about it? Because we see very few on the bars.
I think it'll take time. We are already seeing a lot more. In the last 5 years, I have seen from 10 or 20 in the country to a few hundreds now. So that's really great. In the last 5 years, they have been doing a great job. They're making name for themselves. They're going on to winning competitions in the world. So I think that's fantastic. I think women definitely make really good bartenders because we kind of have this sense of communication at a level that the guys never have. We are way better at communication. We are way better at multi skilling. I think our flavor profiling, our nose, our palate is way better. So honestly, we smile a lot more. You know that. I mean, guys, we have to tell them to smile. So you see that it's very so I think more women will come. It's always going to be a change, but I think a lot of women now have the courage to make those changes. And I think a lot of families are supporting their children now, allowing them to do this. Some of them did not support their children, but now, after seeing how well they've done, and this happens in India today also, not just for the girls, but equally for the boys.
Yeah.
So it's not just women. Of course, women have it worse, but look, it's a culture barrier that will always take time to break. We've never had equal status in this country for the longest time. You know that women have always been backward when it comes to education as well in this country. And I'm talking about it in the broader sense, not in the micro sense, in cities. But the bigger barrier is not that. The bigger barrier is शादी के time हम क्या कहेंगे? Because this whole culture of arranged marriages is still there.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone anywhere.
The changes are there, ma'am, but
Of
still.
course, the changes are radical. But I'm saying if you look at the big picture, it hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
Also, remember that even though we live in nuclear families, we are still joined at the hip to the extended family. So, what will the bua say, and what will the grandmother say, and what will the uncle say, and that is never going away.
Yeah. The society.
So that pressure is always going to be there. Therefore, it is always going to take us longer than anywhere else. But the change has started, and it's not going to stop. So I think you will see a lot more women. Even in Kolkata, you've seen that there are more women now in the bar who are doing really well. You remember Swarbani, who used to be at our bar, how well she's doing now. She's doing a great job of what she's doing. So like her, there are so many in Bombay, Pune, and not just the best part is it's not just in the big cities, it's in smaller cities as well. And a lot of these young women are coming from small cities, from the north, from the east, from everywhere. They're
Yeah.
coming to the big cities, they're studying, and they're becoming, and they're, because they have a lot more going for them. They're so inspired and they're so fierce when it comes to their determination
Exactly.
that they're doing really, really well. So I think we'll see more. It'll take us time. But everything takes time in India, and that's great. We are reaching there. And I don't think there's any turning back for us.
So, ma'am, in this fast-paced social media world, how did it came to your mind to launch your super book Can't Go Wrong Without the Mocktails? Yeah.
Or that was all because of COVID, yeah.
Like,
Seriously. So my first book I wrote and I published in the year 2000.
Mm.
Okay, that was my first book. At that time also they told me the market is not ready for a book like this. So everything I have done, at every stage that I have done it, they have told me that the market is not ready for it, the country is not ready for it, people are not ready for it, the trade is not ready for it. But I believed implicitly that it was time, and I did it. The rest is history. It's been learning for me as well. But during COVID, I was doing so many seminars to keep the morale of the people in our industry up, because there were so many young people without jobs
Yeah.
who were deep in depression. And I used to tell them that, don't look at this as a time where you can't work. Look at it as a break that you've got where you can study and upgrade yourself, because while you are working, you never have the time to study. This is the perfect time for you to study and upgrade yourself, because trust me, once this ends, the market is only going to blow and expand.
That's
So if you think that it will take long for us to recover, trust me, we are Indians. We recover in 1 week. And people used to tell me again that you're crazy. This is it. They will never be able to recover. I said, you don't know India. I have been in Bombay. I've seen how Bombay recovers after all the terror attacks that have been thrown at us. We used to recover the next day and we were working the next day. So I can give you a guarantee that in Bombay, at least, I know that once the bar opens up, everybody will be there and they will do great business. And that's exactly what happened here. Our bars were full from the day we opened.
Ram.
Yeah. So I think, that's when I thought that let me also keep my team, um, let them also boost their morale a little bit, give them something to look forward to. And that's when we started working on our book.
Okay.
We did everything on our own. We wrote the whole book. We edited it. We even did the photography ourselves in the house using whatever I had, with the equipment that we had available to us. Um, we didn't have lights and all that, so we'd use natural light, and we couldn't get lights because Amazon was only delivering a few things at that time. So we actually got table lamps, and we started using table lamps for light. And we did our photography also ourselves, and we got someone to help us design the book, and we used to work online with her. She would send me pages, I would give her instructions, we would talk on the phone, we would meet once in a while, and that was it. And that's how we wrote the entire book, completed it, even printed it ourselves, and then found a way to put it on Amazon. So it was again a huge learning experience. It was great fun, but it was a huge learning experience. It was a big learning experience, honestly, doing something like this all on your own, without having any publishers or anything.
No, but it's a one life, and I think everyone should try whatever there's in their mind.
So I think, when you, like I said, when you put your mind to something, you can achieve. Even things that you have never done in your life, you can achieve it.
Exactly. So, looking ahead, ma'am, what are your future plans and what advice would you give to our women community, our women entrepreneurs to take that first step? What strategies and planning are required for that crucial reach to your goals?
The first thing, of course, is to know what you want to do and why you want to do it. Once you know what you want to do and why you want to do, write down the pros and the cons. I always believe that you have to write out everything. Now, whether you write it by hand, whether you write it on your phone, whether you write it on a computer, but you have to write it down. Okay, write out the entire picture the way you visualize it. Once you've written everything about it, break it down into the smallest element. Even the smallest thing that could go wrong, write it out. Then look at everything you have written, look at everything that you want to do, and break that down into phases, whether it is possible to do it at one time or you have to break it into 3 phases. Write down how much it will cost you for doing each of these things. How much money do you have? How much support you can get? And what is not possible. That will allow you to understand how you should break it down into phases. What are the cons? You look at it and say, how can I solve these?
Correct.
Go step by step, one by one. Be honest with yourself and see how you can solve all these negative issues that may come around it, whether it's things like marketing, distribution, talking, whether it's stocks, whatever it is. Write down and say, how can I change it? Then link it to your phases, and then one step at a time, start doing it. Uh, Again, believe in yourself is very important. Knowing who you are selling to, whatever it is, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, know who you are selling it to, get into the mind of the person you are selling to, and then showcase it, make it, and showcase it accordingly. If you are able to do that, I think for most part you will be successful. And even if you are not, you will learn where you went wrong and you'll be able to redo it again. So I'm not saying that you can't fail. I think failure teaches you a lot more. I have failed many times. People look at me and think I'm the most successful.
You are here. I
But
think failure is
honestly,
the
I have
bottom.
failed. I have failed many times. I have done things and I have failed. I have gone down to zero at least 4 times. But the only reason why I survived is because I had so much belief in myself that even from zero, I said to myself, I have the ability to climb out and to come back on top all over again with nothing.
Yeah.
From nothing, I can still create something. And so I think it's only being extremely strong, being able to believe in yourself and putting every negative thought out of your mind. Most important thing is to learn from your mistakes, but not to look back at them. Once you have moved past them, you move past them. You never look back. If you look back, then that's a lot of time being wasted. Use that time to know how you are going to go forward rather than looking back, अरे यार ऐसा हो गया, अरे वैसा हो गया, इसने मुझे ये किया, उसने मुझे वो किया. कोई फायदा नहीं है. What is done is done. You're not going to be able to change that.
Right.
What you can change is your future. You can't change what has already happened. You can learn from it, you can move past it, and you can go forward and you can change your future. Your future is in your hands. People, the other day only, somebody was talking to me about what? Luck and destiny. And I said, what destiny and what luck are you talking about? There's nothing like that. There is no such thing. There is opportunity and your ability to see the opportunity and act on it.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as destiny. Destiny is what you make it.
Exactly. That's
God has given us all equal brains. He has given us brains so that we would use it. If we depend on Him to even do that for us, then there's not much point in the brain that He gave us.
yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that He gave us a brain so that we could do our own work. Not that we look up at Him and say, Bhaiya, thoda sa mujhe luck bhej do. I think that's rubbish. So I think, destiny is in your hands. Karma is what you do. As simple as that. If it's good karma, it will come back in some way to help you. If it's bad karma, it's a bitch. It'll bite you.
Yeah.
There are so many times when suddenly out of nowhere somebody calls me, people whom I have worked with maybe 10, 20 years ago, but they call me back, they call me and talk to me and say, hey, I have something, would you like to come and do this for me?
Yeah.
It's purely because of the good relationship that you have and the good that you have done with them. That's it, nothing else. So I think that is karma. What you do here, the way in which you do it, if you can be good, do it. If you can't be good, don't be bad. If you can't do anything to help someone, that's fine. But don't do something bad to them. If you can help, that's great. money is not everything. Money is important, yes. There's no turning away from that. But money is not everything. You don't do everything for money. I've done so much work so many times without any money. That was not the criterion at all. The criterion was to be able to share and to be able to help. If you can do that, money will come. In one way or another, it will come to you. So I think, if you work hard, money will always come to you. But good vibes and good karma only comes from being good. I think if you can combine the two, we're good, yeah. Life is good. Life's always going to be good.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this incredible journey you shared with us. And thank you so much to our audience that stay inspired, fearless, and we'll see it to our next session, ma'am. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for your precious time, ma'am.
Not at all. Thanks, Vandana. Good to see you again.